Casey Holdahl is with us, and besides talking about the Rip City 3-on-3 tournament, Casey's been at every pre-draft workout. What do you garner from this? You get a chance to talk to all these guys that come in, and it seems like it's a whirlwind for them. Their stop in Portland is one of maybe 10 or more that they're making throughout the league, depending on how popular they are. So what do you get out of these workouts, and in terms of how in the past you've seen them translate to actual draft day?
Well, I think one is, particularly this year, it's a little bit easier because since they only have one pick, you assume that the guys who are slotted, who most people assume are going to go in the first round, those are the guys that they're somewhat interested in. In years when they've had a first-round pick, multiple first-round picks and second-round picks, you don't know if they really like a guy or if a guy is coming in for a second-round pick that they're looking at. So it does kind of it lessens the amount of options, at least if you're a believer that the Trailblazers are going to draft someone that they work out, which is not really a safe assumption. I think they're just as likely to work out someone or to draft someone they haven't ever seen in their own building as they are a guy that they have seen in their building. But for me, so don't get to watch a lot of the workouts. A lot of it too is just kind of what kind of a personality the guy has and what's his kind of approach to the game. Particularly guys like Justin Anderson and spaced on his name, Rondé. Wallace Jefferson.
Yeah,
Both those guys had real good ways about him too. That I think comes off well in interviews, and I think that's kind of what we've learned throughout the years, or maybe more important than how a guy performs in those workouts is how he does in that interview, going out to dinner with the front office, with the coaches, how he kind of interacts there.
The thing that I like to remind people of is you're not getting someone. There's a very slim chance you're going to get somebody that's going to come in right away and have any impact. I mean, we're looking at Nicholas Batum his first 2 or 3 seasons. No matter what the Blazers do with this pick, if they bring a guy in, if they use that pick to draft a guy, somebody who came in, somebody who didn't come in, they're not drafting next season. They're drafting 2, maybe 3 years down the road because the pick is so late in the draft. Doesn't mean it won't be a good player. Doesn't mean it won't be an impactful player. It just means there's probably going to be some hiccups and some development that has to happen before we see that guy on the court.
Yeah. Case, as you talk to people around the league, do you get any kind of a feel for? And this seems to always differ, and it seems like leading up to every draft, people will often say this is a bad draft. There's not going to be guys that are going to be in the league for a long time, and then you evaluate it a few years later, and often it ends up being better than it looks like going in. Do you get any feel for what people think of the talent available in this draft?
I think for the most part, the things that I've been hearing throughout this entire draft process is that there's some talent up top, and there's some good, decent players up to about 2021, which is kind of a bummer if you're a Trailblazer fan because the Trailblazers are picking at 23. Not to say they're not going to get a player there, but you just kind of read that there's a bit of a drop off at that point. And even Chad Ford had an article today saying that there was at least one general manager who was maybe joking, maybe not so joking, who was in the late first round wondering if he could trade his pick because there just weren't guys there that they felt like that needed to be first-round picks. And a lot of that, too, is because of salaries. And, a lot of teams want the flexibility of second-round picks. So if it's a guy you think you can get in the second round, you'd rather take him there. But to Tone's point, too, I think kind of in that late first round, you're looking at guys who could be players, but everyone's got a knock on him, and not just kind of like a perceived knock, but a fairly legitimate. This is something a limitation this guy has that he's probably always going to have. So a guy like Montrezl Harrell, like a guy who people love in the post. He's a great defender. He's undersized for the position, can't shoot, so it's not like a Draymond Green kind of situation. Right. But there's a guy who could play, but he's does he fit in with Portland because he can't really shoot? And the Trailblazers are a team that would rather have guys who can shoot, and a bad free throw shooter as well, which we've seen,
which is really not a good idea.
Becoming more important now in the NBA. And then you have guys who maybe like a Justin Anderson who's a good shooter, shot 45% last year from 3 for Virginia, but the 2 seasons before that he never shot better than 30%. So is he really a 45% three-point shooter, or is he really a 30% three-point shooter? These are the kind of things that you have to parse out when you're picking that late in the first round because, that's why those guys are still available, just because they're later round picks.
And there's so many things that you have to look at. You're not just looking at his percentage, but his shot overall. Is it a fixable shot? Is there a glitch in the shot that, now that he's 19, 20, 21, 22 years old, that's been there since he was 10 years old, and it's part of his mechanics that has to be fixed? That is the most difficult thing in the world to do, is change a person's shot mechanics. You look at Michael Kidd-Gilchrist. Yep. He has bad shot mechanics, and here we are 4 years later in the NBA. He still can't shoot the ball because the mechanics are wrong. There's so many things that the GMs have to deal with. That's why I'm glad I do TV or radio.
Rondé Hollis Jefferson is that guy, kind of. He can't shoot basically at all. The form on his shot is, I mean, there's no form basically, but an elite defender and a guy who could be an elite NBA defender, but he can't shoot. So again, it's one of those things where you have to kind of decide what's the skill that I'm willing to kind of
which one takes,
deal with.
Yeah,
exactly.
Which one takes
like what's
right
more
here.
important for me and for the team to get that we can kind of overlook some of the other issues.
You mentioned Jefferson, and one of the things that's Hollis Jefferson, and one of the things that stood out to me is watching him, going back to watching him in college and watching him in a workout. He reminds me a little bit, though, of Stacey Augmon. He's got that same kind of body, and Ice ended up being one of those guys that despite the fact that he couldn't shoot, he found ways to be effective at the NBA level.
And Hollis Jefferson, a great finisher at the rim. I think he shot something like 70%, I think, at the rim this year, or in the paint. A guy who he can finish. He's just not going to be able to create his own shot. But if you get a guy who is elite at something, and for him, as you mentioned, like Stacey Augmon, an elite defender, elite physically, super long athlete, a guy who's played big college basketball at Arizona. I mean, I think that's a guy who a lot of what the people say about him, and it's one of the kind of, if you read all of his kind of what the media says about him, is that if he could shoot, he'd be a top 10 pick, no problem.
I love that.
The fact that he can't.
If he can
and
shoot.
especially now, well, and it's become such a premium in the NBA now that like everyone wants shooters, and I'm to the point now where you're even seeing guys who are like 6'10", and you kind of read their profiles and what guys are saying about it, but like, well, he's not really a 3-point shooter.
3-point, this is funny.
Yeah, there's very few of those guys that they're great, but you're not getting them at 23.
Right.
Now, Tone, when you were getting ready for your pro career, you're coming out of a small school, you're hoping to get noticed. Your agent is trying to get you in front of people, which these pre-draft workouts are often good for. In fact, it seems like the agents are controlling things even more than they did in the past, where sometimes they won't let guys work out for certain teams, or they'll try to control the other guys that'll be at that workout, since you have a few guys that can be there with maybe a select candidate that you're looking at, but there's 3 other people there, and sometimes agents they want to know who those other 3 guys will be, because they don't want them working out against certain players. So there's a lot of control that the agents want. But that being put into the picture, how much are the Blazers really getting out of these pre-draft workouts with all the other ways to evaluate prospects that are out there?
I would say, I would venture to say that what Case said a minute ago is about 90% of these workouts. It's not about what you do on the court. By the time they get here to Portland to work out, they've been seen by scouts and advanced scouts, and they've got all of these reports on him and everything about his background and his history. When you get here, it's about that one-on-one meeting, sitting down and having a conversation at dinner for an hour and a half, 2 hours, so we can really get a feel for your personality. We want to know who you are, what you're about, what you're going to talk about. Interesting story for me, though. I only had one pre-draft camp, Wheels, and it was in Milwaukee under Mike Dunleavy, and I'm trying to think. It was a long time. He ended up succeeding Mike Dunleavy as the head coach in Milwaukee. His brother played in the NFL, wide receiver, who's on TV now. Come on. Oh, man. If I said the name, you know him. Butch
Beard?
Butch Carter?
Butch Carter.
Butch Carter. Butch Carter.
Yeah, you got there.
Butch Carter was an assistant coach with the Milwaukee Bucks. We go out to dinner. Now, I'm a struggling college student. This is a true story. We go out to dinner. Dinner is over. Mike Dunleavy never shows up. Nobody shows up because I was me. And dinner is over, and Butch says to me, "Man, I think I lost my wallet."
No.
I swear to God, I was so mad. I ended up paying for dinner.
Oh.
That had to have been part of it. That had to have been planned. They wanted to see how you were going to react to that situation.
Well, they gave me per diem when I got there, but I had to spend my per diem on Butch Carter. I thought I was so mad.
They want to know what you were like with money. They're like, let's see if this guy has spent his per diem already. Let's see how responsible he is.
Casey,
that wasn't the case. Oh, man, I think I left my wallet at home.
But you gracefully paid for it?
That wasn't gracefully. I paid for it.
Yeah, you should have.
And then when they didn't draft you,
your
dropped it, you were really upset.
Yeah, did you ever get that money back?
No, I did not.
With interest, that's got to be.
But he said, I'm gonna send it back to you. Don't worry about it. Yeah, okay.
We'll see you when we draft you. You'll get that money
was
back.
Your first lie from an NBA head coach or NBA coach at that point. Wasn't the last.
And there were many after
more.
that. You know what? You're playing great. Yeah, whatever.
But ironically, you played for Mike Dunleavy.
Yes,
Portland, so it kind of. It's funny how it's a small world and things are very circular.
Yes,
very often.